in just 80 minutes. One of the most beautiful partnerships women's tennis has seen in years came to a heartbreaking end. Not with controversy, not with drama, just a quiet handshake at the net, and two players walking away in opposite directions, each carrying the weight of what could have been. This wasn't just a quarterfinal loss at the Bad Homburg Open. This was the end of a once-in-a-lifetime pairing between a 21-year-old rising star from the Philippines and a 46-year-old living legend who helped build the very sport that rising star now calls home. And when you understand the full story, every detail, every statistic, every symbolic layer, you'll realize why this 80-minute match resonated far beyond the scoreline. The Bad Homburg Open is a WTA 500 grass court event held annually in Germany, just days before Wimbledon begins. For professional players, it serves as one of the most important tune-up tournaments of the grass court season, a final opportunity to sharpen their game on the surface before the sport's most prestigious Grand Slam. When the doubles draw was announced and the names Alexander Eala and Venus Williams appeared side by side, the reaction from tennis fans was immediate. Social media lit up. Tennis analysts weighed in. Former players took notice. A 25-year age gap separated these two women, Venus at 46, Alex at just 21. Yet somehow, that gap made the partnership feel even more compelling. Tennis analyst Chanda Rubin put it best when she said, "They can still sell so many tickets in terms of Venus and Serena, and Eala is one of the most popular players around the globe. A lot of it comes down to that, but they are also legends with the Williams sisters, so they should be able to get anywhere." That quote alone tells you everything about why this pairing captured the world's attention before a single ball was struck. Before you can fully appreciate what this partnership meant, you need to understand who Alex Eala is. Because she is not simply a promising young player enjoying a good run of form. She is a historic figure in Philippine sports, and everything she achieves on a tennis court carries enormous national significance. In 2026, Alex has been one of the most dominant players on the grass court circuit. Earlier in June, she captured the WTA 125 title in Birmingham, England. She then carried that momentum directly into the WTA 500 Berlin Open, where she produced a breakthrough run all the way to the semifinals. Along the way, she defeated some of the sport's biggest names, including a statement victory over Alina Svitolina, which removed any doubt that her success was anything other than earned. By the time she arrived in Bad Homburg, Alex had compiled an outstanding 9-2 record on grass in 2026 alone. Those results have produced a milestone that no Filipino tennis player has ever achieved before. Alex Eala is set to enter Wimbledon as the number 29 seed, the first Filipino player in history to be seeded in the singles draw of a Grand Slam tournament. In a country that has never before produced a player at this level on the sport's biggest stage, that number beside her name represents something far greater than a ranking. It represents months of relentless hard work, giant killing victories, and the unshakable belief that she belongs among the world's elite. When asked what earning a seat at Wimbledon meant to her, Alex answered simply and honestly, "To be a seed in a slam, and Wimbledon in particular, for me, it really touches close to home." Those words carry the emotion of an entire nation behind them. Every time Alex Eala walks onto a tennis court, millions of Filipino fans are watching, believing, and hoping alongside her. And then there is Venus Williams. To describe Venus simply as a former champion is to dramatically undersell what she represents to the sport of tennis and to women's athletics as a whole. Venus is a former world number one in both singles and doubles. She has won 7 Grand Slam singles titles and an astonishing 14 Grand Slam doubles titles, bringing her total doubles championship count to 22. She is a 5-time Wimbledon singles champion and the winner of 49 WTA singles titles across a career that has now spanned decades. She returned to professional tennis at 45 years old, competing on the same tour as players young enough to be her children, and she has done so without apology. Here is a detail that makes the Eala-Venus partnership so emotionally powerful. Venus Williams had already built a legendary career and won major titles before Alex Eala was even born. The version of women's tennis that Alex grew up watching, the one where barriers were broken, where prize money was fought for and won, where young players from countries with little tennis tradition could believe they belonged on the biggest stages. That version of the sport exists in large part because of Venus Williams. Alex grew up admiring this woman. She watched Venus compete at Wimbledon as a child, and now, at 21, she had the chance to stand on the same side of the net and call her a partner. When the tournament began and the Eala-Venus partnership officially took shape, Alex made no attempt to hide how much the moment meant to her. There were no rehearsed, generic answers. Instead, she said, "I am really, really excited. Venus is such a trailblazer and continues to do so much and has done so much for the sport. I like to say that women's tennis has been a trailblazer for women's sports, and she is a big part of why that is." That is not a quote from a player casually describing a doubles partner. That is the voice of someone speaking about a lifelong inspiration. There is also a fascinating backstory to this partnership. Just months earlier, in January 2026 at the ASB Classic, Alex and her then-partner Iva Jovic had actually defeated Venus Williams and Alina Svitolina in the doubles round of 16, winning 7-6, 6-1. Now, for the first time, the two were not on opposite sides of the net. They were standing together on the same one. The crowd at Bad Homburg understood the significance of that shift immediately. The stands were packed, the atmosphere was electric, and fans on both sides of the world were tuned in to watch what might unfold. What unfolded was nothing short of magical, at least for one evening. In their opening match together, Eala and Venus faced the American-Australian tandem of Catherine Harrison and Alexandra Osborne. From the very first game, the two looked like they had been playing together for far longer than a single day. They stormed to a commanding 4-0 lead in the opening set, their movement fluid, their communication sharp, their energy feeding off each other and off the crowd simultaneously. Harrison and Osborne fought back, closing the gap to 4-2 and then staying alive at 3-5. But Eala and Williams were not to be denied. A dominant ninth game put the first set firmly in their hands at 6-3. The second set was tighter. The pairs were level at 4-4 before Alex and Venus broke through to win the final two games and seal a 6-4 second set. Final score, 6-3, 6-4 in just 1 hour and 10 minutes. Venus closed out the match on her own serve, confidently, assuredly, and celebrated with her trademark twirl. For one unforgettable evening, the partnership had lived up to every expectation. Fans watching began to wonder, just how far could these two go together? The answer came less than 24 hours later. Standing across the net in the quarterfinals were Slovakia's Teresa Milikova and Great Britain's Olivia Nichols, the tournament's second seeds. These were not two singles players experimenting in doubles. These were dedicated specialists who had competed together in 9 consecutive tournaments, building the kind of instinctive chemistry and court communication that only comes from months of competing side by side. Earlier in June, they had won the doubles title at the prestigious Queen's Club Championships in London, arriving in Bad Homburg as one of the hottest doubles teams on grass. The match was played on center court under difficult weather conditions, and the pressure of the occasion was immediately palpable. Eala and Venus came out determined, and for a moment, the fairy tale looked like it might continue. They took a 3-2 lead in the opening set, holding serve confidently, the crowd responding with growing belief. Then, almost without warning, everything changed. Milikova and Nichols reeled off 6 consecutive games, sweeping to the remainder of the first set and racing to a 2-0 lead in the second. In the span of what felt like minutes, Eala and Venus had gone from leading the match to chasing it. They managed one break of serve in the 7th game of the second set to briefly extend the match, but Nichols answered immediately with a break of her own. The match was over. Final score, 6-3, 6-2 in 1 hour and 20 minutes. The statistics told the decisive story with brutal clarity. Eala and Venus created 4 breakpoint opportunities throughout the match and converted only 1. Milikova and Nichols earned just 3 breakpoint chances, and they converted every single one. That is the unforgiving reality of doubles tennis. When the door opens, you must walk through it. Eala and Venus couldn't. Their opponents never missed. The painful lesson that this match delivered is one of the sport's oldest truths. In doubles, years of chemistry, communication, and experience will consistently outperform individual star power, no matter how brilliant those individuals are. After the final point, there was no celebration at the expense of their opponents, no dismissive remarks, no attempt to diminish what Eala and Venus had built together in just a few short days. Instead, Milikova stood at the net and acknowledged the magnitude of what she had just been part of. Her words after the match spoke volumes. To play against Venus, or maybe against Serena at Wimbledon, it's once in a lifetime. So, even if you don't want to, you have it in your head. But what a player, both of them. And it was a tough match. Also, the weather was tough to play in. Those are not the words of a player celebrating a routine victory. Those are the words of a competitor who understood she had shared a court with something rare and significant. When even the team that eliminated you pays tribute to the occasion, it tells you everything about the weight the partnership carried. For Eala and Venus, there was no dramatic farewell speech, no tearful press conference. Their partnership ended the way it was always going to end, quietly, professionally, with the conclusion of a one-week grass court campaign. But the emotional weight of that quiet ending was unmistakable. This was almost certainly their first and final time as partners, and both players knew it. Step back from the scorelines and statistics, and what you see is something far more significant than a doubles campaign at a WTA 500 event. Venus Williams may be entering the final chapter of one of the most extraordinary careers in the history of women's sports. Alex Eala is only beginning to discover the full extent of what she is capable of achieving. For one brief tournament, the past and the future of women's tennis stood on the same side of the net. The deeper symbolism of this partnership is impossible to ignore. Venus Williams spent decades fighting for a version of women's tennis where barriers were broken, where prize money was equal, where respect was earned and given, where young players from countries with no tennis tradition could arrive on the biggest stages and believe they belonged. Alex Eala is the living proof that those barriers were broken. A 21-year-old Filipino player, seated at Wimbledon for the first time in history, competing confidently against the world's best. That story exists because of the generation Venus Williams represented. What Alex carries away from Bad Homburg is not a trophy or a ranking point. It is something that cannot be measured. The experience of standing alongside one of her greatest inspirations, learning firsthand from a champion whose legacy shaped the modern game, and carrying that standard forward into her own career. Both players now turn their full attention to Wimbledon, and both arrive with enormously compelling storylines. Alex Eala enters the All-England club as the number 29 seed, the first Filipino player ever to be seeded at a Grand Slam. She receives a first-round bye, meaning she will enter the singles draw with rest and momentum, backed by a 9-2 grass court record and the confidence of a player who has beaten top 10 opponents this season. An entire nation will be watching every match she plays on those famous grass courts, hoping to witness history continue to be written. Venus Williams, meanwhile, prepares for one of the most emotionally significant moments of the entire tennis calendar. At Wimbledon, she will reunite with her sister Serena Williams in the doubles draw, their first tournament together since 2016. Serena's return from a years-long retirement has already been one of the biggest stories in sport, and seeing the Williams sisters stand side by side once more on the grass courts where they built so much of their legendary legacy is a moment the tennis world never fully expected to witness again. Together, they have won 6 Wimbledon doubles titles and Olympic gold at the London 2012 Games. If this proves to be their final appearance together at Wimbledon, it will be one of the most emotional chapters the tournament has ever produced. Years from now, very few people will remember the score of that quarterfinal match in Bad Homburg. They will not remember that Milikova and Nichols converted 3 from 3 break points, or that the match lasted exactly 1 hour and 20 minutes. What they will remember is that for one special week, a rising star and a living legend shared the same side of the net. They will remember that Alex Eala, the young Filipino player who grew up watching Venus Williams compete on the biggest stages, had the extraordinary opportunity to call one of her greatest inspirations a teammate before heading to Wimbledon to make history of her own. This partnership lasted only 2 matches and covered barely more than 2.5 hours of tennis. But it accomplished something far greater than reaching another round. It showed a generation of young players, particularly those from countries where tennis has never produced a champion at this level, that the doors are open, that the barriers are down, and that the dreams their heroes made possible are now within reach. The most meaningful moments in sports are rarely measured in trophies. They are measured in the memories they create, the inspiration they leave behind, and the young players who carry that inspiration forward into their own careers. By every one of those measures, what happened between Alex Eala and Venus Williams at the 2026 Bad Homburg Open was one of the most meaningful moments of the entire grass court season.